Shirley here with Jupitales, and this is fractions before Uranus goes into Gemini. We're going to enter a season of revolutions, and I have been looking at a lot of things that are coming up around that, and the beginning looks like a lot of social engineering, trying to supposedly give the people the sense of power, or being empowered, or the sense of agency, as long as that coincides with the the global status quo of betrayal-based cults. And I want to emphasize and pose the question. There's a question of why revolutions fail when they fail, or why certain revolutions fail to bring us the desired change. And the thing is that, especially at this time, most revolutions are socially engineered. Most revolutions don't actually come to bring the sovereignty and to bring the new, and to where the taboo topics are discussed. The topic of Uranus and revolution. Uranus is life energy, is Kundalini rise, and that's the thing that revolutions and revolutionaries are usually associated with Uranus aspects. So it could be Uranus Mars, or it can be Uranus in the 10th house, or Uranus in the 11th house. But this is the challenge of Uranus. It is about life energy and bursting life energy that wants to be liberated and want to be free, and yet no revolution stands the test of time without tending to sexual sovereignty. And why do I say and yet? Because the challenge with the bursting energy is actually the Venusian challenge. It's the challenge of what it takes to actually have prosperity. And the nature of Uranus is such that there was a violation to life energy, which usually means either sexual violation or violation to the sexual energy. And thus I hear a lot about the West wiped out our leaders, our revolutionary leaders, are this or that. They wanted so good for everybody to have this or to have that. And I'm like, what about sexual sovereignty? And usually we will see that even those revolutionaries and reactionaries, they were going for either the image of the macho, the image of the sexual oppressor, and is usually starting from boys. I'm not even talking feminism here, because most of them were doing that to boys. It's coming from within the very societies that they supposedly rebel. And that can bring a lot of frustration and a sense of despair to the people when they say, oh, we already went to a demonstration, we already did that, and there's nothing happening. But the only people that manage to, let's say, keep something is, first of all, when the people themselves go out to demonstrate on every fragile thing that happens. If you look at France, if the bus ticket goes in 1 cent up, everybody is stopping all of the daily routines and they go to the street. And this is how France maintained itself. And even France is, when it comes to sexual sovereignty, let's put it that way, there is a risk, okay? There is a risk, and it's very likely why it took 300 years between the French Revolution and democratization, and the question of, are people peopling? Because when they don't, then they are been exterminated again and again and again, and it looks like, hey, nothing comes out of those revolutions because the topics of sexual sovereignty are not addressed. I'm not gonna name leaders because everybody say, but they weren't doing this, but they weren't this, but they weren't that, but they weren't, follow the money. What were I don't know how many packages of Viagra doing in the supposed social revolution in Algeria or Libya, because it happened in both. So, kind of like that is not going to yield freedom to anybody. And at this time where we're going to have 7-8 years of Uranus in Gemini, there are going to be a lot of revolutions. People are going to go out to the street, they're going to demonstrate, and so on and so forth. And they're going to be a lot of supposedly awakening of the people, but those times are predicted. And this is where discerning is important, but also culture. I mean, if the current culture, indigenous and not, was just sexually violating, treating the raped as they don't respect themselves, whether it's a young boy or a young girl, centuries upon centuries, then what were they expecting from the revolution? What were they expecting from the revolution then? Another form of tyranny. Venus in Gemini is the last planet that is going through Gemini before Uranus ingresses into Gemini. And this is a telltale, it's a reminder, because a lot of people are just going to be, oh, the West knocked out our favorite leaders and they were so good for us and they were so this, and they were MK Ultra as well, okay? They were rapey, they maybe ran a Peter ring, maybe they had other values that were significant, but they weren't granting the thing that changes everything, which is sexual sovereignty. Lilith in Scorpio reminds us that, and while we are separating from a Mars square Uranus, coming to the trine between Mars and Uranus, so there are going to be some successful revolting effects. However, when we're not acting in favor of sexual sovereignty, and when I say sexual sovereignty, I don't mean rape and tyranny and trafficking under the guise of sexual liberation. I mean sexual sovereignty. Then there's not much we can expect from the so-called social revolutions. And this is why revolutions many times don't stand the test of time, and many times don't lead to the change, because they don't tend to the thing that changes everything. We have a golden opportunity with Venus going through Gemini to look into what is the last planet before Uranus in Gemini. Well, it's actually the planet that is currently ruling over Uranus. What is this planet about? Well, happy connections. That we are all doing that so that we can actually have a community and a society that is not treason and betrayal based, but God forbid if you betray the mafia, and that is also, the Venus Gemini is very flirtatious, it's very sociable, it's not necessarily inherently monogamous, so it's also addressing those issues where, hey, the raped person is not a person that doesn't respect themselves. In the ghetto and in the death and concentration camps, people weren't wearing many clothes, and there's no point in asking what was the young boy wearing, what was the young girl wearing. Nobody was wearing much in the death and concentration camps, and I'm not just talking about what everybody talks about when they say that. Death and concentration camps were everywhere in many cultures, and pretty much ran in quite a similar fashion, except that the Germans just had registry of that. The rest of them didn't. That's the big difference. There are the Holocaust that we're comfortable talking about, and there are the persecution in slavery and death and concentration camps we're less comfortable talking about, like the concentration camps for the homeless in Northern America in 2024, 2022, and still 2025, both in blue pill and red pill. Just the things, and those that tried to broadcast that were arrested, and then you had a violation of the First Amendment that nobody could talk about, not even astrologers who resided within the US and outside the US. How is everyone going to know? Well, the only way I know that is when the people required my American colleagues to talk about those things, and of course they couldn't address them lest they be arrested in the land of the free. So, but yet, that's the point. What is the easiest point for when you want to deport a society, for when you want to cast out, for where you want to persecute? Then everybody remembers the child marriages and the mistreatment of women. And guess what? It is true, and it is suffice enough to exterminate the community, because people themselves want to change so much. And even if they go out of the community, then if the out of the community is actually different, like what happened in Sweden, and in Sweden many women blended into society, of what we know, or we may find out it was just trafficking guys as blended into society, I mean, which looks more plausible, to be very honest, from this day and age perspective. But if they don't, then it's like they ran away to have a better life, and the reason they don't have a better life is both the fact that in their own communities they are doing the same things on a different land, and the fact that when they try to get out of their communities, they are met with secret societies that do the very same things under a nice facade, okay, under different facade. So this is how Venus going through Gemini, about civil society, the city, trade, technology, also social media, is the last planet that tells us what will Uranus be doing. And as usual with the state of the world, to say that I predict that Uranus will be tending to those very things successfully, well, those who will tend to it the best will win over the land, it is true. And we're going to hear a lot of upset people that had leaders that promised the world and on some places delivered, but when it came to sexual sovereignty, they were willing to pay the trafficking price, and basically that made them susceptible to political assassination, because this is how they get the information. Another thing is hospitals and what we allow, again, under any guise, whether it's security conditions, whether it's medical conditions, under which guise we allow people to be mistreated, okay, to such an extent. Now I'm holding here a picture of a young girl hiding one eye with the fruit, looking with makeup like a natural animal and a facial expression that is supposed to be coquettish and sexy, and only the peel of that clementine is on her body, and it's very visible that she's meant to look naked, publishing natural facial products. And so they didn't have xylitol, but this is what they have to do to publish themselves. The story is called Daphne, Skin Feeding, and I was actually going through there and asking for the brochure because I liked the product. So it's not about the product of the company. It's the fact that what do they have to do to have a store in central city Tel Aviv that has a business of supposedly natural products, and they are saying that they are contributing dividends to Freedom Farms of vegan whatnot, but then they could not escape the pedo ring look, the pedo ring chic, so to speak. And that perhaps is why some of my colleagues that wanted to build their business in aromatherapy were filtered out. And some of my colleagues were filtered out as well in astrology. And the popping question of the revolution, which is both a labor revolution, trade revolution, social media revolution, miners, minerals, Sedna minerals, okay? The miners revolution, and it's so easy to make another Sweden over providing miners welfare, because minerals are the basis of our economy, and if we could make the entire world look different with a blink of an eye, and even support the pricing models, because the dividends are so big that they can absolutely be divided to the miners, support the welfare state, a house for everybody on the basis, and even Sweden that did the 105 tax, whatever, I mean, that was a Ponzi scheme, insurance scam. It wasn't because they couldn't fund for the welfare state, okay? Just to make that one clear. And so the welfare state is something that began with giving rights to the miners, and that's the thing. We are at the day and age where we want to abolish slavery, and at the same time sexual sovereignty is of utmost importance, and it's so utmost important because if we do force sexual sovereignty, then those revolutions have a strong basis to sustain. When we go and give that one up, we basically, on a silver plate, gave our economy to the very power families that do those rituals that enslave the people. And that's the difference between an actual revolution and human trafficking under the guise of social agendas that don't stand the test of time and eventually are not yielding. This is why the feminist revolution saved the day for many other revolutions, including the existence of the United States that founded itself as the land of the free. Without the suffragists, the United States would not exist today. And this is even more so because when we talk about women everywhere, then this is across the board, and this is Uranus, is women everywhere. Whereas when we say, oh, my tribal identity is more important to me than the feminist revolution, good morning, on a silver plate you handed your tribe out to colonialism. And yeah, I mean, somebody has to say that. So this is my 2 cents or 2 euros before Uranus ingress Gemini, and just before. And if that would do something to, if only one viewer in a billion gets it, fine, because if that would do something for us not to have to run into, oh my God, the West, they took out, how they eliminated all of our leaders, all of us, all of your corrupt, pedophile, rapey, tyrannical people that covered it up by some sort of promises that were looking good on camera. Some of them lived in tents, but they weren't actually yielding a revolution. Were your people ready for the revolution? Yes? No? Don't cry about the West. The West might be dissolving, so you'll have other problems. And that is, I don't know, my intention that there would actually be the positive changes and the opportunities that are indeed opening when it comes to Uranus. So this is about sexual sovereignty. This is about rituals that are supportive of life and not life sacrificing. Okay, I talked about it a lot in Spirit of Matter during the 7th of October. The rituals that are of human sacrifice are not going to yield freedom to anybody. And definitely not wealth, and definitely not fertility. So, but that is also an indigenous question. It's not just a modernity or West question, it's an indigenous question. How are children treated all over the world? The trade of children all over the world. And the fact that I can have a completely, so totally organically vegan face cream products, and indeed the products, I have no bad word to say about them. As an aromatherapist, I said, oh my god, I actually want to buy some for me, because sometimes I just don't have the power to prepare everything for myself, and I'm comfortable with having, you know, another person doing that, so I don't have to carry the burden alone. And everything was so nice, and the customer service was amazing, and everything really, really nice, and the dividends going to a freedom farm of cows and so on, so really cute. And then she hands me the brochure, and only today I woke up and I see, like, this is a little girl covering her face in Illuminati fashion, made up like a little tigress or something, doing the coquettish face that my mother would scold me for if I dared to do when I was a child, because I was also the second frontier of those social engineering. Okay, listen to Annika Lucas. With the clementine on her peel on her shoulder, signaling that she is naked, and having some sort of a fear in her eyes, applying to exactly the pedo rings and exactly the kinks of the people that want to see girls and boys in that very look, because this is what they are erotically attracted to. And the rest of it is fantastic. Customer service, amazing. Products, not a bad word to say. Branding, amazing. Location of the shop, spectacular. The dividends that they give to some freedom farm, fantastic. Whether you're vegan or not is not a bad cause. Everything's fine as long as they comply with child trafficking. I guess that's why my business was having a hard time, whichever niche I took, whether from the astrology or from the aromatherapy. Yes, I'm not gonna cry about like I'm not gonna cry about like the true crime stuff. I mean, there I know it is difficult. Okay, but even when it comes to simple things like I don't know, astrology readings. Well, during the time where Pfizer was an astrologer and there was COVID, problematic. Okay, aromatherapy. Well, actually, to holistically look at the situation and think with the patient, what is the change they have to make in their lives? Quite challenging. Ik maak probleem. What can I do? So here I am sending a psychic message to the people who somehow stumbled upon my almost non-existent YouTube channel, because that's the state of the affair. So it's going to be an onset of Uranus into Gemini, liberating a lot of stuff, and a lot of people are going to be disappointed. A lot of people are going to say, they took our Gaddafi, they took our this, they took our that, they took nothing. None of these people actually posed a genuine challenge to the wealth families, but he was making a bank. He was making his own individual child trafficking economy, which naturally would compete with those existing families that already do that. of all religions. That's what's up. So what are you saying? There wasn't any Libyan revolution? There was an image of a Libyan revolution, yes. But images, as you can see, and I'm going to put here the image of this young lady. The business is called Daphne, by the way, and people say no, bad publicity is publicity as well. Well, I'm going to take that chance and I'm going to raise that topic into question. Perhaps even for the sake of Daphne, that maybe is waiting for somebody to call that out so that she can change that and tell to the social engineers, well, the public doesn't want that. So this is not me going against her business even, but just in favor of this young child that probably has no idea, and we have no idea what other things were done to her.